It's time for The Wrap with Carrie Lutz and Ty Andros. For more information, go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com or tedbits.com. This is the place to go to find out what's really happening in the markets. Hey, Ty, it is June 21st, 2012, and lots of fun things going on in the world, isn't there?
Well, we're just moving hand over fist towards the ultimate demise of the currency and financial systems. I'll call it a Greek tragedy a day. We saw the jokesters at the G20 meeting earlier this week go there and have caviar and shrimp and everything else. And you could see the poorly concealed contempt between many of the participants sitting there looking at Barack Obama and Putin had his sourpuss on, but he's firmly in control of the relationship.
Yeah, I don't even talk about politics because what's the difference? We're looking at a lot of things going on here in Europe. We talked about the EU Commission ending the ratings requirement for debt, reducing collateral requirements, and all sorts of good stuff. So what's with that? You don't need to be rated anymore to issue debt in the world?
Well, they just don't agree with the ratings agency anymore because they're just not being politically correct and playing from the socialist media book. And, this is all a collapse of socialism and people that like to take power away from others. And, if you can't get them to tell to say what they want, you just have to go shoot the messenger. And, of course, Moody's and S&P have been misrating government debt for years. You can just look at credit default swaps that imply, 9-notch downgrades, 6-notch downgrades, 3-notch downgrades. They're finally at least, starting to put the proper labels on this stuff, and they don't like it.
So they're basically picking up their marbles and going home, huh?
Well, everything's political over there. There's nothing, they're not shooting for practical solutions. There's, the people talk about austerity. There's been no austerity in government over there. The austerity is in the private sector where they, jack up VAT taxes by 20% and fees and everything else. It's just killing the private sector. It's the end game of socialist dictatorships. And they can see the end game is in sight. It's just like what you see going on in Argentina, where they are nationalizing foreign holdings of corporations. That's coming to America. That's coming to Europe. That's where socialism heads. You only need to look at Hugo Chavez and Cristina Fernandez to know where things are headed. And, the insolvencies are from the top down, Carrie, not from the bottom up. It's just that these dominoes are going to just cut off the weakest ones first and just keep working them just like have you ever seen a killer whale around a pack of regular whales? What they do is they look for the weakest or the calves and they cut them away from the pack and, do what they do. And that's the way markets are going to do this. They're just going to sit there and go after the weakest hands first and force their hands, and then they'll go after the next one. I mean, the idea, we haven't talked in a couple weeks, and, we really haven't talked about Francois Hollande in France. I mean, that's that whole, now he's gathered up a legislative majority on top of the presidency. And that's a death knell. France doesn't produce more than it consumes, but, they certainly do pay you more than you produce.
I think they should cut the work week from 35 hours down to 30, and that will surely have a good effect on employment.
Should surge, okay? Especially since they'll keep all the wages at the previous level. They won't let the employers pocket the savings. They'll take it and give it to their cronies.
Yeah, well, that's the way it always works. I mean, we know this. We've seen this over and over and over again. There's nothing new under the sun, as they say. Until the thing collapses, how can it possibly right itself? That's like self-policing. Doesn't work.
The people that have created the solutions aren't capable of creating the solutions.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. These are hardcore socialists, and they are looking to take everything and put it under their thumb, and they can see the end zone.
And when they hit the end zone, there's going to be nothing left for them there, is there?
No, that's the ultimate denouement. That's the collapsing of the economies, which are pretty far along that. I'm doing a newsletter this week, and got some startling other numbers about imputed growth, which we spoke about last time. But it's just, the U.S. is running at 150% debt to GDP. I mean, this year, the United States has got to, with rolling old debt and new borrowing, has got to raise 25% of GDP. Portugal's at 26. Italy's at 28. Japan's over 35. Spain's at 20. France is at 18. It's these are huge things to be getting through. I have to wonder, where they're going to get the. Spain is having a run, as we well know, but the dirty little secret is that the people who are having maturing debt are not rolling it.
Right. So
they've got to find new people to buy it and get their new borrowing done. And, that LTRO money is now gone. But the problem is that LTRO money was used to buy Spanish debt at higher prices.
Right.
So those banks are sitting on huge losses. If they weren't able to keep them on their books at par, because supposedly they're holding them to maturity.
Right.
And they're supposed to be, by regulatory fiat, it's a risk-free security.
Oh, yeah. We love risk-free. That really exists. So,
well, it exists in the fairy tale world of a politician who's selling hot air.
Yeah, that's what they do best. And Ty, what did you make of not Greenspan? I can't even keep them apart anymore. What did you make of the Bernank's statements yesterday and his failure to announce QE3 but extend Operation Twist?
Well, he couldn't withdraw Twist. Isn't it interesting that the new Twist ends exactly when the physical cliff comes? So now we have one other thing that's going to end on that day. And I would say that the Federal Reserve has got, they're buying more than they would say. I mean, they're taking maturing debt and rolling that. It's not just that. Any debt that's maturing or would supposedly mature if it was being paid is being, put into U.S. Treasury. So there's a lot of, positive bias, as I think we discussed it months ago. The Fed is buying 60 to 70% of all the long-term debt in the United States.
So, but they're not admitting what they're doing, are they?
Well, the numbers are available, but they're not reported. I mean, you get that report where at Zero Hedge.
Yeah,
and about hedge, the only place in the world that'll tell you. And it looks like gold and silver are gonna, well, not silver, but I think gold is going to, they're making a low. Right. But I'm sitting here looking at Huey. It rallied to a resistance line and failed. And now it's doing an outside down week. So looks like we're going to have a double bottom and go test those lows in Huey. And as you well know, there are unbelievable bank runs going on in Europe right now. To pretend that that's not happening, which they are, there's going to come a day very soon in Europe where some of the countries you go to the ATM and it doesn't work.
Yeah. Well, we've been talking about that for a while. We're seeing a bank in Italy that's having a bit of a holiday BNI. And what's next?
Well, who knows? There's hundreds of banks that are zombies over there. They don't let banks fail. They just let them keep going in insolvency. But at what point were they finally going to start closing them up? But, we've been having, over the last couple of years, hundreds of banks failures. Okay, you don't think that there's the same thing happening over there? Well, why haven't any of the banks been closed?
But they've stopped pretty well closing banks in the U.S. now as well. There hasn't been one that's been shut down. We were expecting hundreds of them to be shut down, and now they've stopped, which tells me there's probably something afoot where they just decided it's not worth shutting them down. They'll just keep them going as zombie banks.
Well, they have to. I don't think they have anybody that'll take the assets. They're so underwater. I mean, when you shut a bank, you have to have somebody to take it over.
Yeah, otherwise the cost is huge, right?
And I think they've run out of buyers.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you are correct. I think you're correct. So what's next?
Well, we're just moving slowly but surely to the ultimate denouement. And it's who knows how long it's going to take. Could take a year, could take 5 years.
Right.
But this is, where they all head, and that's called, the land of the dead. And we're in the land of the dead, and the prescriptions of to recover, are inconceivable. Taking all the regulations and cutting them by a third, and getting the tax system in order, and there's been a lot of hearings on Dodd-Frank, and they really weren't pretty. We had Brock can talk about them, stopping his agenda, but between 2008 and 2010, we had such I'll call it a socialist injection that, he got more legislation passed than anybody that I can remember.
Right.
And let's all pray that we just dodge a bullet and the Supreme Court does what's right and gets rid of the whole healthcare law en masse rather than try to preserve parts of it.
Yeah, I just can't see them keeping it. But, what I've learned over the years is never underestimate the power of the Supreme Court to not decide something and to make things even worse than they were before it started. And we could very well see that happen now. No question in my mind. I've seen it all too often. It happens all the time. Many things, campaign finance, so many things they've done this to. And I think we could pretty well see that happen now, but you never know. We could always be hopeful. And so you got another chance to buy gold and silver, right? At discounted prices.
At least today. It's been fairly firm up till now, but today they're conducting a paper selling operation, and the war on the floor. And I'm sure that you've seen the reports over the last several weeks of the massive buying of physical gold by the Russians and the Chinese and all the central banks around the world. So we have people in London and New York that sell short paper, gold and silver that they don't have, and we have other people getting rid of paper and asking for real money, and sooner or later those people that sold short are going to have to deliver.
That's going to be interesting, and if that doesn't make the price go up, then nothing will.
Oh, we're making huge long-term corrections here. It's just gorgeous. I hate to, rain on anybody's parade, but, just go look at a chart going back 10 years and you can see episodes like this 3 or 4 times, with 2008 being really the last major one. Well, what happened after 2008? We went from 1,700 to 1,900.
Yes.
I expect that same kind of a percentage move to come out of this bottom. But it's gorgeous. Go look at a monthly chart. Anybody that can chart anything knows that bull markets go to neutral, which is a 50 RSI, and then restart. And on a monthly chart, the RSI on gold is 50.
Right. Mm-hmm.
It's just it's one of those things. We have the Bernank trying to these guys try to kill the canary in the coal mine, and they're trying to do it, and they aren't able to keep it from going up over the long term. But short term, they can win skirmishes.
Yeah, long term, the market is dominant. The market rules. But in the short term, who knows what can happen? And that's why everyone needs to be looking for the long term and not day to day, because it will drive you to distraction and make you start second guessing yourself, right?
Yep, that's just opportunities. You always want to buy things cheap. Okay, yeah. And this is one of those glorious days where those little worthless pieces of paper in your pocket are worth more. They buy more.
Yeah.
And all you can do is look at it as a gift that this is a short-term blip in the purchasing power of worthless paper before the next leg down begins.
Don't you find that remarkable that that these grain stamps, as I call them, we all remember the grain stamps, used to get them at the gas station, at the supermarket. These grain stamps can actually buy something of value. I just shake my head oftentimes and just wonder, like, how did it get like this? How did this happen? Because there's no value to these things, and it's living on borrowed time, and yet we don't really have any choices right now. For right now, we have no choices, but down the road a piece, things are going to be different. That's for sure. Anyway, Ty, we got to wrap up the wrap, and tedbits.com, financialsurvivalnetwork.com. You can hear this interview and many others that Ty and I have done. And Ty, you're going to have some charts for me so that I can send them out with this week's Financial Survival newsletter.
I will. I'm actually finishing up my latest newsletter called When Hope Turns to Fear.
All right.
And it's a tour de force, but definitely have a stiff drink nearby before you open it up.
All right. Can we do an excerpt and send that out to our listeners?
Certainly.
All right.
Absolutely.
Excellent. We will do that. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com, sign up for the newsletter toolkit. You'll get Ty's newsletter for this week, and Godspeed.
I love you all. God bless you.